Earth is a level, motionless plane, with the sun, moon, and stars revolving over and around us just as you experience every day. The North Pole is the magnetic monopole center point, with Polaris, the North Pole star, situated directly above. Polaris is the only motionless star in the heavens, with all the other constellations revolving perfect circles over the Earth every night.
So here you can see obviously we're looking north towards the North Pole. Stars are rotating anti-clockwise. This is what we actually observe. Yeah, the North Pole rotates within 0.75 a degree of the North, sorry, Polaris does, of the North Pole. If we look east, stars rise up from the horizon. If we look to the south, we now see stars rotating clockwise. Opposite direction to the north. Opposite direction, but we're still on a fixed plane Earth. Right? So this is how, very simply, you don't have to say the reflecting from the north, reflecting from one side to the other, or any kind of strange anomaly. There's no need to explain. We'll go through all these big explanations. It's one semi-sphere of stars all rotating across one axis with two poles. Think about your back axle of your car, if you like, but obviously with a huge semi-sphere. If we look west, we see the stars setting and all rise in the east again. Very, very straightforward. Earth is a fixed plane, the heavens rotate about us, and this is how we get opposite star rotation, north and south. I'll do one more and show
the electromagnetic ether is a luminiferous substance for the propagation of light, and it's in a constant state of vortex motion, and it carries all the heavenly bodies according to their varying altitudes, densities, and frequencies. And it's made up of two vortices, one in the north, and one in the south. Now you put these side by side, and you can see when you're facing in one direction, it appears to rotate in one direction, and when you're facing the other direction, it seems to rotate in the other direction. If you're on the equator, you'll just see them pass straight over your head, like that, and then they'll obviously bend off to the sides. This is an interesting time lapse. So I'm going to say that there's two wheels in the sky, and not just one. So when the moon is high on the Tropic of Cancer, and it appears to be circling the northern circuit, as the moon gets southern declination, it will cross the celestial equator and pick up on the ethereal currents in the opposing vortex. So what it'll be doing then, it'll appear to circle in the southern circuit. And as you can see here, for the time lapse, the moon crosses over and it appears to be circling in the opposite, or the opposing vortex. And as it gets northern declination and crosses the celestial equator again, it will appear to rotating around the northern circuit. So when the moon's high on top of Cancer, if you take a time lapse, what you'll see, the moon will appear to be following the stars in the north. You take one bang on the celestial equator, whoom, travels in a perfectly straight line. Take a time lapse when the moon's low on the Tropic of Capricorn, and it'd appear to circle in this, what I call the southern circuit. Now, observing the sky is not going to affect the land beneath our feet. We know it's flat, we know there's no measurable curvature, so all I'm trying to do here is look at it from a different perspective. So, from the equator, what you'll see, you can actually see both celestial poles, the north and the south. Looks a bit like a dome as well from there, actually. There you'll see, comes round, that's the south celestial pole from the equator. And the stars will just appear to go straight over your head from there. And there you can see the north celestial pole. A bit like a giant magnet. Magnet has two poles. Yeah. Some of the currents go in one direction at the north pole, and some of the currents go in the opposite direction in the south pole. So for an analogy, imagine that the clock is two giant wheels in the sky. As you can see, one wheel turns one direction and one wheel turns in the other direction. And if you put that image with the time lapse from the equator side by side, they look very similar, don't they? There you can see you've got the stars coming overhead, but you've also got the North Pole and the South Pole.
The reality is that the Earth and Polaris do not move, while everything else in the heavens revolves over Earth and around Polaris, east to west, like in a planetarium dome. The reality is that the Earth and Polaris do not move, while everything else in the heavens revolves over Earth and around Polaris, east to west, like in a planetarium dome. Our Earth planetarium, however, is so vast that perspective won't allow any observer to see all the stars simultaneously from any one vantage point. We can see Polaris, Ursa Major and Minor, and other northern constellations from every point north of the equator simultaneously, but conversely cannot see the so-called South Pole star, Sigma Octantis, the Southern Cross, or other outer constellations simultaneously from every point south of the equator, because they all sweep over a great southern arc from their rise in the evening to their setting in the morning, but conversely cannot see the so-called South Pole star, Sigma Octantis, the Southern Cross, or other outer constellations simultaneously from every point south of the equator, because they all sweep over a great southern arc from their rise in the evening to their setting in the morning.